Hey guys, my name is Nabiri and it's time for another kicking of the week. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of movement in a hardstyle kick. So I got some questions about remaking some kicks, making a headhunters type of kick, or making a tutorial like Frontliner did with distorting 909s and making a kick that way. And while I was working on a till, I just really got a nice moving character. And I just really want to talk about that. And after that, I'm going to show you how you can make your own moving characters for hardstyle tills. So this till I quickly want to show you guys is sounding like this. And as you can hear, there's just a ton of movement in there. And I just want to show you how you can use EQ and distortion to create that movement. So when you take that till and tear it apart, it has two layers, as you can see. And one sounds like this, and the other one sounds like this. So they kind of work together by having a crunch in a different part of the frequency spectrum. This one has a little bit of a higher crunch and a little bit more characteristic, while this one is a little bit more low, more growly. It's more gritty, but it has a little less crunch. So I layered these two together. And as you can see, I just paid attention that they were in phase with each other. And yeah, after that, I just wanted to distort the two layers together and create a nice new layer out of it. And that's when I really got a great amount of movement for this till. And it actually almost finished the till with just two layers. So I'm quite lazy and I don't like using all sorts of automations and stuff to make parameters move in EQ. So that's why I have shade, and shade is just great for creating these automatic movements in parameters inside of EQs. So we got a lot of movement over here for this one's moving up and down, this one's moving vertically up and down in the gain. It's just helping the sound move a little bit. So as I add this shade into these two layers, it will start sounding too filtered, but it's already creating some movement. Listen. And if we distort that afterwards, then we can really get a nice gritty tone out of there and a nice moving character for our till. Now I use Tantrum for this distortion, and the benefit about Tantrum is that it also plays around a little bit with the phasing before distorting and after distorting. And that's good, but if you don't have Tantrum, you can also just use Distortion and start playing around with the tone and the mode so that you can create some movement in that way. It just sounds different, so you need to work around having a different type of distortion. So having this movement, it's just building that character, and I felt I just needed a little bit more sub, and I just tied it off a little bit with an extra distortion, and that created this hugely moving till. So in the end, if you just want to have a nicely moving till, you can just take your parameters and make them move inside of your EQ, distort that, and just create a nice movement for your kicks. So because I was getting questions about making kicks with 909s, I just wanted to make one layer out of a 909, and I'm going to make the other layer out of Serum, so that you can see that it doesn't really matter if you're using Serum to make your growls or maybe using 909s to create a nice till layer. So the thing I'm going to open up with is just some distortion, and we're going to shape this with an EQ in front of that. Now I'm just going to shape the kick a little bit inside the drumazon so that it's becoming a little bit longer, has a little bit more movement inside of the 909 because it's taking longer between the attack and the decay of the kick. So as you can see, shaping that 909 a little bit inside drumazon already helps you to create a nice growl and some more movement for this one layer. So let's keep this first EQ quite easy. And now we're just gonna add a new one, and we're gonna add a distortion after that, so that we can shape our tail further. So as I said, playing around with this tone and the mode just helps you create some more movement and different movement for a tail layer. So I'm just playing around with this, seeing how it sounds, seeing how it manipulates the sound, and then we're going to EQ this to create a nice layer. So from the moment that I'm gonna start making dips, I'm already just listening to how that certain dip just shapes the tail layer that I'm working on. So that every dip or every peak that I make from now on is just placed there with a reason. And the only reason just needs to be that you like the sound that you're creating. So also a method of listening that you need to understand when making your own tail layers is that you don't always need to use the sound from the start. So over here, this sound, I quite like this actually, but it sounds too distorted at the beginning. So if I'd sample this, I might just want to use this part. So that you just don't need to use the start if you don't like it. So try to be creative when making your tails and listen to what's inside of the sound. Don't listen to the sound in its entirety. So I think I actually like this, so let's just sample this. And now we're gonna make our tail layer in Serum. So I'm just gonna be taking a sine wave, and the second oscillator is just going to be something random. So I'm not going to think about this too much, maybe click through it a little bit. And then I'm going to move the oscillators down by 2. That just transposes the tail down. So we get a nice sub. And then I'm pulling down the random so that we can work on a sample because it's starting the phase at the same point each moment. So now the sound that we created is this. And if I distort that, it's going to sound like this. So you're kind of having the same sound as you're getting from distorting a 909, but it's just not moving. And the way that we want to create this movement in Serum is just with the wavetable position. And we put an LFO on here to create that movement for this wavetable. And you see, just by putting an LFO on there, you can create a sick amount of movement where with using a 909, you need to make dips and peaks and all sort of stuff to just create movement out of one 909. But yeah, let's just keep working on this Serum layer, and then we're gonna put it underneath our 909 layer. So I'm just gonna shape this how I want it, and just gonna listen through the sound and just change the filter. And the filter is just the same as an EQ. So we're kind of having 2 EQs in here. This filter, this EQ over here. And if we want, we can add a third EQ as well. And we can put these in front of the distortion to create a nice movement for our tail. And the reason I'm putting this on 0 square is because it's the most gritty type of distortion in Serum. And I'm treating this dip the same as I'm treating dips in EQs when making a 909 kick. This dip needs to be pointed at the exact frequency where I like the sound that I'm creating. It just needs to start creating some movement. And we can even make this move if we want to. So we can create our moving EQ inside of Serum. So if I speed through this process a little bit by making some peaks in this EQ over here, maybe making some stuff move and finish up this still, then we can get to the point that we're working to, and it's creating movement out of 2 layers. So let's say we want to use this as a layer. We're going to sample this. And we got this nice movement over here. And we're going to put this underneath our layer that we created already. Now we're going to make sure that they're in phase. So the way I'm doing this is just scrolling through the waveform and listening to it. And if you don't want to listen to it, you can just easily take a look at it and see when these up and down, the positive and negative parts of the waveform are aligning. That's when it's in phase. Now we're going to take away this first part because we need a punch in front of this when we make a full kick out of this. So we don't need this. And we're only going to be focusing on our tail. And the first thing that I'm going to be doing, because we said we might only want to use this part or maybe a little bit more from the front, I'm just going to scroll through this waveform and make sure that it sounds right. And we're going to put these two in a mixer channel so we can shape the balancing from the volumes a little bit. So now I move the two tails around a little bit till where I feel it sounds nice. And after that I just pulled down the 909 layer a little bit and pulled the Serum layer a little bit more up front. So I'm getting this type of sound. It just works together nice, but it doesn't really have too much filtering movement. So now we're going to route these two layers to a channel. And now we're going to create some movement. And I'm just going to stick with shade, but if you don't have shade, you can just use a normal EQ and start making the points move. But I just like using shade for this. So I'm just going to set up shade and pull it to some settings that I know that work, especially in the LFO. So I'm going to make this follow a metronome and just shape this LFO a little bit. So then I know for sure that the movement that it's making doesn't repeat twice in the same tail. So we're going to put this LFO, for example, on this point over here. And we're going to make it a little bit more small. So now with this movement, it's just creating some more filtering inside of these two layers. And I'm just going to play around with this, and after that I'm going to add a distortion, and then we're going to see how it shapes the sound. You're never going to know how your sound is going to be shaped. Just play around with it, be creative, and just keep your mind open to whatever sound's going to come out of it. So maybe something like this will create a nice sound. So let's just open distortion first, and maybe we're going to try some other distortions afterwards. And let's just loop this tail so we can really hear how this tail is moving if it would be having a punch in front of it. So without thinking too much and just listening to how each dip and each boost just creates a new movement into your character, this is just how you can create some awesome characteristic movement for your tails. And yeah, as you can see right now, I'm only using sideways movement, but you can also just use an LFO or an automation to automate the gain so that it's going to be moving down as well while the kick is progressing. Maybe that's going to be sounding nice. I think at the end of this tutorial, I hope it shows you that when you just have a creative mind and just listen to how the sound gets shaped by distortion, you can just really create some awesome, sick and moving characteristic tails. So just play around with EQ, make sure the parameters move. You can really just create great moving tails with only 2 layers. So if you have any questions about any topic around producing music, just let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, I hope you liked this tutorial and I hope to see you back soon again. Cheers!